So I'm going to go ahead and review what we did in class on Thursday regarding Excel. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and download the file like we did in class. All of our files will be stored in Google Sheets, and I'll always give you the link for those. So you can go ahead and hit Control and left click, and that will usually open it up. Some computers at the university, like for example my office computer, have certain security restrictions and they don't allow you to open hyperlinks. In that case, you can simply copy and paste the URL into a blank web page. Okay, so this is our data sheet. You notice that it looks very much like an Excel spreadsheet, and we can do a lot of things in Google Sheets that we could do in Excel, but unfortunately it does have some limitations. So we're going to go ahead and just download this into Excel. So we go ahead and click on File on the far right, on the far left top menu here. And I'm going to go ahead and say Download As, and this little menu pops up and we say Excel. All right. And it may take a minute, and there it is at the bottom. Okay. One of the things I said before that's going to be really important in this class is saving your data sets. So we're going to come back and use data sets, and if you don't save them, you're going to have to repeat everything we did before, and it's going to become a pain. And so this will also help you when you study for your exams and stuff like this, to have all of those data sheets in one place. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to open up this data sheet here, and there we go. All right, and so what I'm going to do apropos my last comment is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this. And it's a good idea to have a dedicated file folder where you can save it. So I'm just going to make up a folder on my desktop and call this MA222 Fall 2019. And then inside of that folder, I'm going to make another folder called Data Files. So we'll create a new folder, and I'll just call this Data. And then I can go ahead and I can store this here. All right. And again, we don't want to save as CSV. We're always going to save as XLSX. So if you look at the Save As options, okay, we're always going to save it as an Excel workbook. So there are some options, like whether you want to save it to like Excel 2010 or 2016. I wouldn't get into all those. Just save it as an Excel workbook, and that's always the most current version. All right, so let's go ahead and add our column. So when we want to add a column, I'm going to go ahead and click at the place I want to add a column. So notice I just click on the letter A. It highlights everything in that column. I'm going to right click and click Insert. Okay. And left click, and there you go. All right. If I wanted to add a row, it would be the same way. I'm not going to do it because it would mess up the data set. But, you know, I could click on this row. I could click on Insert, you know, right click, Insert, and add. I'm not going to do that, okay? And we wanted to put a label in this. So notice that all of our variable names tend to be on the top row. That's called a header in Excel. And I'm just going to go ahead and call this number. All right. And there we go. And so we want to create a numbered list. I want to number all of these apartments. So I'm going to go ahead, and the way we create a number list in Excel is I'm going to enter a few numbers. So I'm going to start the list off. Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click on the first one. I'm just going to drag down, highlight them all. And then I'm going to hover my mouse, and notice there are different types of crosses. There's a big cross, there's a pointy cross, and there's a flat cross. That flat cross appears when you put your cursor perfectly at the bottom of the right-hand portion of the highlighted cells. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and just drag down, and it will complete my numbered list. All right. There's the end of my list, and voila, there we go. Okay. Now, one of the things that we notice is when we look at this list now, we see that it doesn't quite look the same as the rest of the data set. It doesn't have these nice borders around the cells. So I want to go ahead and I want to format that. And this may seem like a trivial thing, but when someone's trying to read your data set, having those borders actually helps guide their eye quite well and really makes it easier for them to read your file. And you also, by the way. So in order to put borders around the cells, I'm going to click on the first one. I'm going to left click, and then I'm just going to drag down. So all I'm going to do here is just select the cells that I want to put a border around. And then there are various ways of doing this, okay? You can right click and you'll see this little menu here, bottom border, or you can go back up to the menu and I can click borders and I'll click all borders. One other thing I'm going to do that I didn't mention in the notes is I'm going to center the values. Notice these values are nice and centered, these aren't. So if I go ahead and click on column A and I click center, it formats those really nicely for me. Okay, so now we want to learn how to do basic calculations in Excel. And you notice that this data set is kind of big, and so I'm going to do a couple of things to use my space more efficiently. I'm going to click right here, and notice it will shrink the column to the size of the contents, okay? So if you go to the border and double click, and that helps you not take up so much space in your files. So there's all this space that we don't need. And the reason why is I want to add cells. I want to add some stuff in these columns here, and I'm not going to be able to see what I'm doing because I want to use things from these low lettered columns. I'm not going to be able to see what I'm actually doing very well. I'm going to have to scroll and it's going to be a mess. So there we go. All right. So in column O, what I want to do is I want to compute the price per square foot of each apartment. So notice that the first apartment, its monthly rent was $1,120. Its apartment size was 1,050 square feet. And so I want to compute what the price per square foot is. So first of all, I'm going to put a label for this column. I'm going to call this price per square foot. You could call it whatever you want. It doesn't really matter, you know. All right. And now I want to compute this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit an equal sign. It's important to understand whenever you want Excel to return a value, you always have to start off with an equals. Notice, for example, if I type 2 plus 3, nothing happens. Excel thinks I'm entering text, all right? So in order to compute anything, you have to have an equal sign. So what I want to do is I want to take the price, and rather than type in 11.20, which is going to A, take more time, and B, I might make a mistake, I'm just going to click on the cell. And I want to divide that by the apartment size, which is an E2, all right? And now I'm going to hit enter. Now, notice I cited two advantages. It's faster and I don't make mistakes, but there's actually a third reason why. Suppose, for example, I wanted to change this number to 900. If I wanted to change the price per square foot, I'd have to go back over and do that calculation separately. But I want you to notice, I want you to watch very carefully what happens in O2 when I change the apartment size to 900. Watch what happens. So what happens is Excel automatically updates every calculation that references whatever's in that cell. And that's a very, very nice characteristic of a cell. I'm going to undo. You can undo by clicking this button, and I'm back to where I was before. Okay, now there's a couple of things I want to do. First of all, suppose I want to do this calculation for every single apartment. I do not want to enter that command for 120 other apartments, right? I'd like to have a really nice, simple way of doing that. In Excel, we're going to use what's called the pull down command. And to illustrate how this works, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the cell where the calculation was done. Again, I'm going to hover over this and I'm going to drag down, and I'm only going to drag it down to the next row. So notice what Excel does. Here, notice it's dividing whatever's in B2 by whatever's in E2. When I click on this cell, notice what it's doing. It's dividing whatever's in B3 by whatever's in E3. In other words, it pulls down all the similar cells. It does the same calculation for the corresponding cell in the row below. And of course, I can go ahead and now just drag it down to the bottom, like I did when I was making that list. and it gives me all the values really nicely. Okay. Now, there's a problem with these values. There's a couple of problems. The first is that some of these values don't exist. Okay. And the other values that do exist, they have too many decimal places. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the values at one time. What I'm going to do is start with the first value, and then I'm going to hit Control-Shift down at the same time. And that automatically goes to the last value in the list. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, I'm going to right-click, say Format Cells, go to Number, and I only want 2 decimal places, so I'm going to hit 2 decimal places. And notice I can do that. Even though some of the values do not exist, it still lets me do that. And now this looks really nice and neat. Okay, I can make sense of those numbers. All right. So we might want to copy some values. So for example, if I want to copy this value, what I'm going to do is go ahead and select it, right-click, copy, and suppose I want to paste it in P2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click. I'm not going to hit Control-V. Don't do that. And I can paste it different ways. I can paste it as a value. Okay. Notice when I click on a value, it just gives me the value. But I can also paste it as a formula. Now notice when I try this, it screws up, because when I paste it as a formula, it moves over those cells, just kind of like the drag down command does. So I don't want to paste it as a formula. I just want to paste it as the values. All right. And there we go. And so I can go ahead and I can do that with the entire column if I want to. Okay. I won't bother to do that right now. Now suppose I want to sort the values. One of the reasons why I might want to sort values, and this is a great case in this column O where the price per square foot is, notice that some of them do not exist. So I might want to find out what is the largest, what is the most expensive apartment per square foot, what is the least expensive, but I also might want to get rid of the bad values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on price per square foot, go up to data. I'm going to click on the sort command. Now generally we want to expand the selection, and what happens when you're expanding the selection is it's going to include all of the data. And the reason why we want to do that is because when I sort these values, I want the other values that correspond with them to also be sorted in the same order. So I'm going to go ahead and click on sort, and I'm going to choose price per square foot, go down to this drop down menu, and I can do it from smallest to largest, and there we are. And what happened because I hit the expand the selection, all of the data that was with the price per square foot of 0.67, it also moved. Notice that the numbers are not 1 through 121. The order of the numbers have changed, right? And I can go down here to the bottom if I wanted to, find those bad data values, and I could highlight them all and hit delete, and I would take them all out. Okay. We want to do a lot of computations in Excel. We definitely want to use Excel to do all of our computations. We rarely do things by hand. So, for example, when I want to compute the average, I always have to enter equal. Remember, I want Excel to return me some value, right? So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start typing in average. Notice that Excel gives me this drop-down menu of all the commands. It starts with AV. I'm going to choose average. And one really cool thing about Excel is it tells you what else it needs. So notice it's asking you what numbers do you want to take the average of. That's the highlighted text here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose an entire range. So I might want to take, say, the average number of pictures. I'm just going to do that, okay? So I'm going to click here, do Control-Shift down. All right. You got to be a little careful with Control-Shift down. So there's one thing that I didn't tell you, which is Control-Shift down will stop if there's a blank space. So let's choose all the values and not use Control-Shift down, okay? So I'm going to go back up to here. I'm going to take out this. I'm going to click here, and now I'm just going to drag down. All right. Oops. And there we go. Notice that I can't see the command, but it's up here in the command window. If I wanted to, I can put the ending parentheses, although I don't have to. And I go up here, and it computes the average number of pictures. So this is in the Craigslist ad. There's an average of 10.3 pictures, okay? If I want to compute the square root, okay, I just type equal, and then I type in whatever the number, the square root is, or the cell whose value I want to compute the square root of, and that's it. Okay, that's pretty much a basic overview of what we're going to do in Excel. We'll expand on this and learn more commands, but these are the basics.